The celestial accord hung in the void like a jewel, its massive rings rotating slowly around the burning heart of a neutron star. Inside the grand chamber, beings from 1,000 worlds gathered to witness humanity's petition. The air shimmered with translation fields as Ambassador Elena Reeves stood before the council, her hands clasped behind her back. She had practiced this speech for months. 50 years ago, humanity had been granted provisional membership in the galactic community. 50 years of proving themselves, of following every rule, of jumping through every bureaucratic hoop. Now she stood before the elder races, asking for what should have been theirs by right. Humanity has met every requirement, Elena said, her voice steady despite the weight of billions watching from Earth. We have contributed to galactic trade, shared our scientific discoveries, and maintained peace with all neighboring species. We request full council membership. From his seat in the observation gallery, Consul Thane Kovac watched the council members react. He saw it in their body language, in the subtle shifts of their crystalline structures and energy fields. They were not impressed. High Arbiter Zeexthel rose first. The Vexari was ancient, his crystalline body reflecting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to see. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like breaking glass. The humans wish recognition, Zeexthel said, and there was amusement in his tone. Tell me, Ambassador, does your species still propel their vessels with controlled explosions? Do you still burn fossil remnants to power your worlds? Elena's jaw tightened. We use fusion technology across most of our fleet, and our homeworld has been carbon neutral for 30 years. Fusion, a Luminari representative whispered, their energy form pulsing with what might have been laughter. How quaint. We mastered zero-point energy extraction before your son was born. Kovac's hands gripped the railing. He had seen this before, in different contexts. The look of those who believed themselves superior, untouchable. He had fought beside men and women who carried that same arrogance, and he had watched them die when reality proved them wrong. There is also the matter of stability, another council member added. The Kret Collective spoke with one voice from 1,000 bodies. Humans remain dangerously emotional. Individual consciousness breeds chaos. How can we trust beings who war among themselves? We have had galactic peace for 3 generations, Elena countered, but her words fell on deaf ears. Zeexthel's form shifted, catching light like a prism. 3 generations. We have had peace for 3,000 years. Your species is young. Ambassador Reeves, you are children playing with fire, barely evolved from the trees of your homeworld. Perhaps, in another century, when you have matured, we might reconsider. The vote came swiftly. Out of 200 council members, only 17 voted in favor of humanity's petition. The rest voted for another 100 years of provisional status, another 100 years of restricted trade routes, another 100 years of being treated as lesser beings. Elena stood frozen as the chamber erupted in the sounds of 1,000 languages. She had believed in the process, in diplomacy, in the idea that doing everything right would be enough. Now she knew better. As the council adjourned, Kovac made his way down to the diplomatic chambers. He found Elena staring out a viewport at the neutron star's fierce light, her reflection ghostly in the glass. They were never going to approve us, Kovac said quietly. Elena didn't turn. We did everything they asked. It doesn't matter. Kovac moved to stand beside her. They don't see us as worthy. They see us as primitive, dangerous. We remind them of something they've forgotten. What's that? That the universe doesn't care about elegance or age or superiority. It only cares about survival. Kovac had learned that lesson on Titan. During the rebellion, he had watched as corporate soldiers with superior weapons and tactics had been ground down by colonists who refused to quit, who fought with whatever they had, who survived because giving up meant death. Elena finally looked at him. In the harsh light, he could see the anger in her eyes, the frustration. What do we do now? What do we do? Now, we go home. We prepare. And we remember this moment. Kovac gestured at the station around them. They've built themselves a beautiful civilization. All crystal and light and peaceful cooperation. But beauty is fragile, Ambassador. You think something's coming. I think the universe has a way of testing everyone eventually. And when it tests them, they're going to remember that humans have been tested every day since we climbed down from those trees they mocked us about. They stood in silence, watching the neutron star burn. Neither of them knew that in 3 weeks, the test would come. Neither of them knew that the mocking laughter of the Galactic Council would turn to desperate pleas. Neither of them knew that humanity's rejection would become their salvation. But Kovac felt it in his bones, the old soldier's instinct. A storm was coming. And when it hit, the galaxy would learn what humanity had always known. Sometimes the primitive ones are the only ones who remember how to fight. 3 weeks after humanity's rejection, the first detection stations began reporting anomalies. At first, nobody paid attention. Space was full of strange signals, quantum fluctuations, and cosmic background noise. But then, the pattern emerged. And the pattern was impossible to ignore. Dr. Sarah Chen was working the night shift at humanity's deep space monitoring station orbiting Neptune when her instruments went mad. Gravitational waves rippled through space-time in patterns that should not exist. She ran the data 3 times, certain her equipment was malfunctioning. The readings stayed the same. This can't be right, she muttered, pulling up the analysis. According to her instruments, something massive was moving in the dark space beyond the galactic rim. Not one thing, millions of things, all moving in perfect coordination. She sent the data to the Celestial Accord, flagged as high priority. Then she sent it to every other monitoring station in human space. Within 6 hours, confirmations came, flooding back. The Vexari had detected it. The Luminari had detected it. The Kret Collective had detected it. Every species with deep space sensors was seeing the same thing. Something was coming. High Arbiter Zeke called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. For the first time in living memory, every seat was filled. The chamber that had been half empty during humanity's petition now overflowed with representatives from every corner of known space. Consul Kovac watched from the gallery again, but this time he was not alone. The observation deck was packed with military observers from a dozen species, all watching the same holographic display that floated above the council floor. It showed the galaxy as a spiral of light, and from the darkness beyond, a red tide was advancing. Millions upon millions of signals, moving with purpose, heading toward the outer rim. The signal pattern matches historical records, a Vexari scientist was explaining, his crystalline voice shaking in a way Kovac had never heard before. We have cross-referenced with archives dating back 2 million years. There is a 97% probability that these are the Devourers. The chamber fell silent. Then voices erupted in every language at once. Translation fields, struggling to keep up with the chaos. The Devourers are myth, someone protested. The data does not lie, the scientist replied. They consumed 3 galactic clusters before vanishing into deep space. They are machines, self-replicating, adaptive. They break down matter at the atomic level and convert it into more of themselves. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They devour. Kovac felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought many enemies, but never something like this. Never something that treated entire worlds as raw materials. How long until they reach inhabited space? Zeke asked. 6 weeks, perhaps 7. More chaos. Council members demanding action, proposing defenses, arguing about strategy. Kovac watched them and saw something that troubled him. He saw panic. Yes, but also something else. Confusion. These beings had lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten how to think about war. A Luminari representative flickered brightly. Our energy shields can repel any attack. We will create a defensive barrier at the rim. Our weapons can strike with pinpoint precision. Avexari added. We will target their command structures. The Kret collective numbers in the trillions, the hive mind announced. We will overwhelm them with numbers. Kovac leaned over to the human military observer beside him, Captain Okonkwo. They're thinking about this all wrong. You saw the data, Okonkwo whispered back. Millions of ships. Maybe billions. This isn't a battle. It's an extinction event. Exactly. And they're planning to fight it like a border dispute. On the council floor, Zixthel was calling for order. We must establish a unified defense. All species will contribute ships and resources according to their capacity. We will coordinate our efforts and present a united front. He pulled up a list of required contributions. Kovac saw humanity's name appear with the others. The demand was steep, but not as steep as some. Then he saw the breakdown, and his blood went cold. Humanity was expected to contribute 60% of ground forces, but only 10% of the fleet command. They wanted human soldiers to die, but not human leaders to make decisions. Elena Reeves was on the floor now, her face flushed with anger. This is unacceptable. You ask for our people but give us no voice in how they're used. Humanity lacks the experience for strategic command, Zixthel said dismissively. Your species has fought among yourselves, not against existential threats. Leave strategy to those who understand it. You understand cooperation and politics, Elena shot back. We understand war. Your petition was rejected 3 weeks ago, Zixthel reminded her coldly. You are provisional members. You will contribute as required or face sanctions. Kovac stood up. Around him, other observers turned to look, but he did not care. He made his way down from the gallery, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. Security moved to stop him, but Elena saw him coming and waved them off. He walked straight to the council floor, standing beside the ambassador. Every eye in the chamber was on him now. Consul Kovac, Zixthel said, his tone warning. Then I'll make this quick, Kovac replied. You want our soldiers. You want our blood. But you won't give us respect. You won't give us a voice. So here's humanity's answer. No. The chamber erupted. Elena looked at him with wide eyes. This was not diplomatic. This was not proper procedure. This was going to have consequences. But Kovac had seen enough. He had watched the data. He had listened to their plans. And he knew with absolute certainty that if humanity followed their lead, humanity would die. We will defend ourselves, Kovac continued over the noise. And anyone who wants to join us is welcome. But we're done asking for permission. He turned and walked out, Elena hurrying after him. Behind them, the Galactic Council descended into chaos, and somewhere in the dark beyond the stars, the Devourers drew closer. The message reached Earth 12 hours later. Consul Kovac's rejection of the Galactic Council's terms spread across every human colony, every space station, every ship in the fleet. Reaction was immediate and fierce. Some called Kovac a hero. Others called him a madman who had doomed humanity to fight alone. But in the halls of power on Earth, in the military command centers scattered across the solar system, a different conversation was happening. We have 6 weeks, Admiral Morrison said, standing before the holographic display in Geneva Command. Maybe less. The Devourers are moving faster than projected. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's military forces, representatives from the colonies, and Kovac himself, who had returned to Earth to face the consequences of his actions. Elena Reeves stood beside him, having resigned her position as ambassador to support his decision. The Council is demanding we reconsider, a politician said nervously. They're threatening trade embargoes, technology restrictions, complete isolation. 2000 is, maybe a rissos. Kovac leaned forward. They can't isolate us if we're all dead. The Devourers don't care about trade agreements. But can we win alone? Morrison asked. Against millions of enemy ships? No, Kovac said bluntly. But we can survive. There's a difference. He pulled up data from the old archives, from humanity's bloodiest wars. Every species in the galaxy has lived in peace for thousands of years. They've forgotten what real war looks like. They think it's about elegant tactics and minimal casualties. But this isn't that kind of fight. He showed them battles from Earth's history. The siege of Stalingrad, the Pacific Island campaigns, the Titan Rebellion, conflicts where victory came not from superior technology, but from the willingness to endure, to adapt, to fight with everything available. The Devourers are machines, Kovac continued. They adapt to threats. The Council's plan is to hit them with coordinated, efficient attacks. But machines learn from patterns. We need to be unpredictable, chaotic, human. Morrison studied the historical data. You want us to fight dirty. I want us to fight like we're the only thing standing between Earth and extinction. Because we are. Because the order went out that night. Total war mobilization. Every factory, every shipyard, every resource in human space was redirected to one purpose: survival. On Mars, the terraforming equipment was stripped down and converted into weapons factories. Asteroid miners found their drills repurposed into ship-mounted railguns. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with whatever weapons could be bolted to their hulls. If it could fly and carry a warhead, it became part of humanity's defense fleet. The colonies responded with fierce determination. Titan, Europa, the belt stations, the outer rim settlements. Every human outpost began producing weapons, training soldiers, preparing for war. They had lived on the edge of survival their entire existence. This was just another threat, another challenge to overcome. Kovac traveled between military bases, overseeing preparations. At Luna Command, he watched Marines train in zero-gravity combat, learning to fight in conditions that would make traditional tactics useless. On Earth, he inspected the production lines, churning out nuclear mines disguised as space debris. It's not pretty, he told Morrison during one inspection. But pretty doesn't win wars. Other species began to take notice. The provisional members, the ones like humanity who were kept at the edges of galactic society, started making quiet contacts. The Drex, a reptilian species known for their aggression. The Korath clans, warriors who had been mocked for their violent culture. The Talani, who had been marginalized for their emotional nature. One by one, they approached humanity with the same message. If humans were willing to fight on their own terms, they wanted to join. A week before the projected Devourer arrival, the Galactic Council sent another delegation to Earth. This time, they came with offers: full membership, technology transfers, equal voice in command decisions. Everything humanity had asked for, now freely given. Kovac met them in Geneva, in the same building where the United Nations had once debated the fate of nations. The delegation was led by a Vex Ari named Silren, younger than Zixthel but carrying the same aura of crystalline superiority, though now tempered with desperation. We were hasty, Silren said. The Council recognizes humanity's value. We offer full membership, effective immediately, in exchange for your cooperation in the defense plan. Elena, who had remained as Kovac's advisor, studied the offer carefully. This is everything we asked for 3 weeks ago. Yes, Silren agreed. Please, time is running out. Kovac read through the terms. Full membership, access to all galactic resources, command positions for human officers. It was a complete reversal. But buried in the legal language was a clause that made him pause. You still maintain final authority over strategic decisions, he said. Human commanders would advise, but the Council would approve all major actions. A formality, Silren insisted. We simply need to ensure coordination. No, Kovac said. You need to ensure we follow your plan. The same, elegant, coordinated plan that will get us all killed. You cannot know that, Kovac stood. I know that machines adapt. I know that predictable attacks will be countered. And I know that when the shooting starts, we won't have time for committee decisions and council votes. War doesn't work that way. Then what do you propose? Silren's crystalline structure reflected frustration. Fight with us on our terms, or fight without us. Those are your choices. The delegation left empty-handed. That night, Kovac stood on the observation deck of the Orbital Command Center, looking down at Earth. The planet glowed with lights, billions of humans going about their lives, unaware of how close they were to the edge. Elena joined him. The Council is moving their defensive line to the outer rim. They're gathering everything they have. How long until contact? 3 days. Maybe 4. Kovac watched the planet turn slowly below. We've done what we can. The fleet is ready. The soldiers are trained. Now we see if it's enough. Thane, Elena said quietly. What if we're wrong? What if the Council's plan works? Then we'll be grateful, Kovac replied. But if we're right, and they fail, humanity needs to be ready to stand alone, because nobody else will save us. 3 days later, the Devourers reached the outer rim. The Galactic Council's defensive line moved to meet them, confident in their superior technology, their coordinated tactics, their thousands of years of civilization. Humanity watched and waited, their crude ships and desperate soldiers holding position behind the main line. They had been mocked as primitive, as barely evolved apes playing with fire. Soon the galaxy would learn what humanity had known all along. Sometimes, the primitive ones are the only ones who survive. The defensive line stretched across 100 light-years of space, anchored at strategic points along the outer rim. The Galactic Council had assembled the greatest fleet in recorded history. Vex-Ari crystalline warships that could strike with laser precision. Luminary energy constructs that phased through solid matter. Kret collective swarm ships that moved with perfect coordination. Over 50,000 vessels, representing the combined might of galactic civilization. Behind them, separate and unbidden, hung humanity's fleet. 2,000 ships, cobbled together from military vessels, retrofitted civilian craft, and mining equipment, armed with improvised weapons. They looked crude next to the elegant lines of the Council fleet. They were crude. But Consul Kovac, standing on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, did not care about elegance. All ships maintain current position, he ordered. Weapons cold. Wait for my signal. Captain Okonkwo, now his second in command, studied the sensor readings. The main display showed them. The sensor data translated the approaching force into something human minds could process. But the reality was still overwhelming. Geometric shapes of impossible size, each one larger than Earth's moon. They moved through space like a tide, breaking down asteroids, comets, even stray hydrogen atoms, consuming everything and converting it into more of themselves. There were millions of them, perhaps billions. The sensors could not count them all. Council fleet is moving to engage, Okonkwo reported. They're forming attack formation. Beta 7. Kovac watched the Council ships move into position, precise and coordinated. They had drilled this maneuver for a week, perfecting it until every ship moved in harmony. Like a ballet in the void, the Devourers entered weapons range. The Council fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the lead Devourer constructs. Missiles streaked toward their targets. Kinetic projectiles traveled at relativistic speeds. The firepower on display could have shattered planets. The Devourers adapted. Kovac saw it happen in real time. The first volley was devastating, destroying dozens of constructs. But by the second volley, the Devourers had analyzed the attacks, calculated the energy signatures, and begun deploying countermeasures. Energy beams were absorbed or deflected. Missiles were intercepted. Kinetic rounds struck adaptive armor that had not existed seconds before. They're learning, Okonkwo whispered. Just like you said, the Devourers returned fire. beams of force that unmade matter, reducing ships to their component atoms. Swarms of smaller constructs that latched onto hulls and began dismantling them. The Council fleet's shields held at first, then began to fail, as the Devourers analyzed and exploited every weakness. The Vex-Ari warships tried to maintain distance, using their precision weapons. The Devourers swarmed them. Too many targets to track. The Luminari phased through matter to avoid attacks. The Devourers generated fields that locked them back into normal space. The Kret Collective tried to overwhelm with numbers. 1 trillion small ships against the machine tide. The Devourers hacked their hive mind communication and turned entire sections of the swarm against itself. It took 3 hours. 3 hours for 2 million years of galactic civilization to break apart. Kovac watched ships burn. He watched the elegant formations dissolve into chaos. He watched as the Council fleet, which had never known true defeat, learned what it meant to face an enemy that did not care about honor or rules or the sanctity of life. "Sir," Okonkwo said urgently, "they're retreating. The entire Council fleet is pulling back." The fleet was not retreating. It was running. Ships broke formation and fled in every direction, some toward the inner systems, others toward empty space. Discipline collapsed. The Devourers pursued, harvesting ships like wheat, and then the Devourers noticed humanity's fleet. "They're turning toward us," a sensor officer reported, his voice tight with fear. 300 enemy contacts, accelerating to intercept. Kovac stood and walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the approaching swarm. Behind him, he felt every eye watching, waiting for his order. They had trained for this. They had prepared. But preparation and reality were different things. He thought of Earth, of the billions who were depending on him, of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They had come so far, climbed from caves to space in a cosmic eye blink, and now they stood at the edge of extinction. "All ships," Kovac said, his voice calm and clear. The human fleet charged. There was no elegant formation, no coordinated ballet. Ships broke into individual attack patterns, each captain fighting their own battle. Some went straight in, engines burning at maximum, ramming Devourer constructs with jury-rigged armor plating. Others scattered nuclear mines disguised as debris. A few flew in spirals, making themselves unpredictable, impossible to pattern. The Devourers adapted to the Council fleet's precision. But humanity did not fight with precision. Humanity fought with chaos. A mining ship, its cargo hold full of explosives, rammed a Devourer construct and detonated, taking 3 more with it. The Devourers calculated the attack vector and prepared defenses. The next mining ship came from a completely different angle, moving erratically, its pilot manually steering to avoid pattern recognition. Railguns fired solid slugs of metal, primitive weapons that moved too fast for shields designed against energy weapons. When the Devourers adapted to solid projectiles, humanity switched to missiles. When they adapted to missiles, humanity went back to railguns, but at different velocities. The Indomitable shook as Devourer weapons raked across its hull. Shields failed. Armor burned away. But Kovac kept the ship moving forward, firing every weapon they had. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 9, damage control reported. We've lost main power to starboard weapons. Reroute everything to port side," Kovac ordered. "And get me closer. Sir, we're breaking apart." Then we break apart shooting. A Devourer construct loomed ahead, so large it filled the view screen. Its surface writhed with smaller machines, repairing damage faster than they could inflict it. Kovac saw their weapons were useless. They could not destroy it, but they could hurt it. "All hands, abandon aft sections," Kovac ordered. "Everyone to forward escape pods. Okonkwo, get them out. What about you? I'm going to give that thing indigestion." They evacuated the ship in 3 minutes. Kovac stayed on the bridge, watching his crew escape, watching the Devourer approach. When the last pod launched, He locked the helm toward the construct's center mass and tied down the throttle. Then he activated the reactor overload. The Indomitable accelerated, burning its last fuel. Kovac stood at the viewport, watching the construct grow larger. He thought of his wife. Dead, 10 years. His children, grown and serving on other ships. He thought of Earth, beautiful and blue, the cradle of humanity. For Earth, he whispered. The ship struck the construct at 40% light speed. The reactor detonated a microsecond later. The explosion was visible across 3 star systems, a brief new star in the darkness. When the light faded, the construct was torn in half, its core exposed, its smaller machines scattered and confused. And across the battlefield, humanity saw their Consul's sacrifice and fought harder. Thane Kovac woke to the sound of medical equipment and the smell of antiseptic. His body felt wrong, distant, like he was wearing someone else's skin. He tried to move and found his limbs wrapped in regeneration fields. "Easy, sir," a voice said. A medic leaned into view, human, young, with tired eyes. "The escape pod's emergency systems kept you alive, but you took massive radiation exposure. We're still growing you a new liver." "The battle," Kovac rasped. "We held the line, barely, lost 40% of the fleet, but we held." The medic checked his vital signs. "The Council wants to see you. They've been waiting for you to wake up." 2 days later, Kovac stood before the Galactic Council again. His body was still healing, held together by medicine and stubbornness. He wore his uniform, burned and patched, refusing the ceremonial robes they had offered. Elena Reeves stood beside him, her hand on his arm for support. The Celestial Accord looked different now. The chamber that had been full of arrogance and dismissal was now packed with beings who had seen their civilization nearly end. High Arbiter Zixthel sat in his chair. His crystalline structure dimmed, cracked in places that would take years to heal. But they were not here to apologize. Not yet. The emergency klaxons were still echoing through the station, the alarms that had been sounding for 2 weeks, as the Devourers pushed deeper into galactic space. Humanity's stand had bought time, but the war was far from over. The Devourers were regrouping, adapting, preparing for another assault. Zixthel spoke first. "Consul Kovac, we are grateful you survived. Your sacrifice at the Outer Rim saved thousands of lives." "It wasn't a sacrifice," Kovac replied, his voice rough. "Sacrifices are supposed to mean something. I just did what needed to be done." A Luminari representative pulsed with light. "The Council has reconsidered humanity's status. We grant full membership, effective immediately, with all rights and privileges." "You already offered that," Elena said coldly. 2 weeks ago. We declined." "The situation has changed," Zixthel said. "The Devourers have penetrated our defensive perimeter. They have consumed 17 colony worlds. Our fleets are scattered. We need unity. We need your help." Kovac looked around the chamber. He saw the fear in every being present, regardless of their form. Energy beings, flickering with anxiety. Crystalline structures showing stress fractures. Hive minds broadcasting panic across their networks. They were terrified. These ancient races who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had finally learned what it meant to face extinction. "You built yourselves a beautiful civilization," Kovac said quietly. "All crystal palaces and elegant ships and peaceful cooperation. You built it over millions of years, and you forgot something important." "What?" Zixthel asked. "That the universe isn't gentle. It doesn't care how old you are or how advanced your technology is. It only cares about one thing. Can you survive?" Kovac moved forward, ignoring the pain in his body. "Humanity never forgot that. We couldn't afford to. Every day on Earth was a fight. Weather, predators, disease, each other. We climbed down from the trees you mocked us about, and we had to fight for every single day we stayed alive. We didn't become civilized because the universe was kind. We became civilized, despite the universe trying to kill us. He stopped in front of Zeeksthel's chair, looking up at the ancient being. You wanted our blood. You wanted our soldiers to die while you made the decisions. But you don't understand what blood means. What fighting means. You've lived in peace so long that war is just a theory to you. We understand now, Zeeksthl said, and there was genuine pain in his voice. We were arrogant. We underestimated the threat and underestimated humanity. We are asking, not demanding. Will you help us? Kovac was silent for a long moment. Behind him, Elena watched, knowing this decision would shape humanity's future. Around the chamber, 1,000 species held their breath. We'll help, Kovac finally said. But on our terms. Human commanders will have full authority over military operations. No committee decisions. No council votes during combat. When the shooting starts, you follow our lead. That is unprecedented, a council member protested. So is extinction, Kovac shot back. You've had 2 million years to prepare for this threat. You failed. We've had 6 weeks. And we're the only ones who held the line. So either you trust us to do this our way, or you can watch your civilization die while following procedure. Relectively ride. Relectively ride. We've not held to subscribe champ to the tarm, and relectively ride. We've had 6 weeks. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some supported the human demands. Others called them outrageous. But beneath the noise, Kovac heard something else. He heard the fear, the desperation, the realization that they had no choice. Zeeksthl raised a crystalline appendage for silence. Very well. Consul Kovac. The Galactic Council grants you supreme military command. All forces will answer to you. Not me, Kovac said. I'm too damaged to lead. Admiral Morrison will take overall command. But I'll advise, and I want full access to every piece of technology you've been keeping from us. Every weapon, every shield generator, every engine design. If we're going to lead this fight, we need every tool available. You shall have it, Zeeksthl agreed. What is your plan? Kovac pulled up a tactical display. The Daverers adapt to patterns, so we don't use patterns. We teach every ship captain to think independently, to fight their own battle. We use hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, false retreats. We make them chase us into traps. We use their adaptation against them by constantly changing how we fight. That sounds like chaos, a Vex Ari representative said. It is chaos, but organized chaos. Controlled madness. The kind of fighting that humans have been perfecting for millennia. Kovac highlighted areas on the map. We also use attrition warfare. We trade space for time. Make them pay for every light year they advance. We destroy resources they might use. Force them to extend supply lines. That could take years, the Luminari protested. Decades. Yes, Kovac agreed. But you'll be alive to see those years. The alternative is extinction in weeks. The Council voted. For the first time in galactic history, they voted to give complete military authority to a single species. The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. The combined offensive began 3 days later. Human tacticians trained alien commanders in guerrilla warfare, teaching elegant beings to fight dirty. They showed them how to ambush, how to retreat and strike back, how to use emotion and unpredictability to confuse machine intelligence. The Vex Ari learned to break their precise formations and fight with controlled chaos. The Luminari learned to use their phasing ability not for grace but for hit-and-run attacks. The Kret learned to split their hive mind, creating multiple independent groups that the Devourers could not hack simultaneously. The war lasted 18 months. 18 months of bloody, grinding combat. Hundreds of worlds were lost. Billions died. But every week, Humanity taught the galaxy a new lesson in survival. They taught them about sacrifice, about fighting when victory seemed impossible, about enduring when every instinct screamed to run, about finding courage not in the absence of fear but in acting despite it. The final battle took place at the galactic core's edge, where human-designed weapons and alien technology combined into a force the Devourers could not adapt to fast enough. The tide of machines broke, scattered, and fled back into dark space. When the war ended, Thane Kovacs stood once more before the Galactic Council. This time, the chamber was different. Human flags hung beside alien banners. Holographic memorials showed the names of the dead, billions from every species. Zixthel descended from his chair and approached Kovac. The ancient being moved slowly, his crystalline form still scarred from battle. He stopped before the human consul and did something unprecedented. He bowed. "Humanity saved the galaxy," Zixthel said. "We mocked you as primitive. We were fools. You were not primitive. You were survivors. And you taught us how to survive." Kovac looked at the memorial walls, seeing human names mixed with alien ones. He thought of all those who had died, who had fought with everything they had, who had proven that humanity belonged among the stars. "Respect isn't given," Kovac said quietly. "It's earned. We paid for ours in blood and fire, and the galaxy will never forget," Zixthel replied. Years later, when historians wrote about the Devourer War, they called it the moment the galaxy learned its most important lesson. That civilization was not measured by age, or technology, or elegance. It was measured by the will to survive, the courage to fight, and the strength to endure. They called it humanity's gift to the galaxy. The reminder that sometimes the universe needs survivors more than it needs sophistication. And in 1,000 languages, across 1,000,000 worlds, they remembered the consul who got the alarm echoed through the cosmos, and the species that taught them all how to truly live.